This is where burnout occurs because you're not being strategic with your decisions. You're not giving yourself time away so that way you actually have the thinking time to make actual decisions. You're not thinking about the future state of your practice, so everything becomes more or less like, what's on the to-do list now? Let me answer this phone call today. And that's not how it works. That is not how it works. Welcome to CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I'm your host, Brandy Mabra. It's time to show up as a confident leader to create a practice and life you love. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. This is Brandy Mabra. And today we are talking all about why leadership becomes a constraint before you realize it. So it's something that I see where the leadership skills that you have, the business starts to outpace them. And there's the leadership gap, which is a real thing. I also want to say that we talk about team members where the practice outgrows their skill set or that team member outgrows the position that they're in. The same thing happens from the CEO seat. Either the business is outgrowing the leadership that you're giving, or you start to outgrow your business, And so it's the same idea. It's something that will cost you time, cost you money, cost you so much energy and unnecessary stress that we have to keep talking about it. We have to keep talking about it. A lot of times people go after, and I talked about this last week, where it's like, oh, let me make more money. If I make more money, then it's going to fix the problem. Really, if you want to make more money sustainably, you have to fix your leadership. That is the goal. You don't want to have, especially in healthcare, you don't want to have a janky practice experience or patients are now putting you up on Google with bad Google reviews because your leadership isn't where it needs to be. And it's very, very common, especially when you get to multi-6, 7, and absolutely when you start to get to multi-7, going towards 8, where that leadership and how you are showing up as a leader is making the biggest impact. Ultimately, as your practice continues to grow, the number one thing that has to change is your leadership mindset, your CEO mindset. And when that lags behind, then it makes it challenging for the business when it comes to the judgments that you're making or the decisions that you're calling, how you're leading your team, the expectations that you're making for your team, holding your team accountable, saying one thing and maybe doing something else, how you're delegating, like all of that comes in play when we're talking about that true CEO identity and the mindset that comes with it. So oftentimes what happens is when the practice is growing, it's great, but then the skill set for how you need to work with your team needs to change, right? And the conversations that you're having with your team needs to change. So the best story I have for this is, you guys have heard me, part of my journey is I went from leading a team of 3 to a team of 100 plus with multiple practice locations. I've been part of teams that have been in person, part of teams that have been hybrid, with the virtual model, like all the things. So my story is that when I first started out with leadership, I had a team of three employees. And in that experience, because it was the beginning stages, then I wore all the hats. I was scheduling. I was doing billing. I had to fill in. I was the go-to. If somebody was out, I was stepping in for that team member. I was doing administrative work. And then on top of that, because I have a clinical background, then I was getting pulled into things clinically, like pulling patients back and on all the little intake stuff and all the things. So completely in the weeds. And it was easy for me to do that work. It felt actually very purposeful. I was there to back up my team. My team, felt supported because if they needed to take PTO, then I'm like, oh, I got it. Let me answer the phone. No big deal. Or I got it. I can go ahead and do the billing. No problem. Until I got to a team of 100 plus in that same skill set of being, the backup, of being the person who was in the weeds. It also, during that time, I had to learn to take out time for myself to really take like a higher level view of things. But it's completely identical when you are first starting out, right? So when you have a smaller team, you can get away with a lot of that. And it's oftentimes what people continue to do despite the fact that they have more team members that are now part of the practice, despite the fact that they're now making more money inside the practice, because it feels like this is what I'm supposed to do because this is what I've always done. But that costs you time and that costs you money. There is no way in the world when I got to the official C-suite and now I have 100 plus team members in multiple locations that I was going to be able to sit at a desk and answer the phone. That is a complete waste of my time. And the leadership piece became super important. So it was different. I could lead by answering questions, but then I had to step into this is the vision when you have 100 plus team members. This is where we're going because you have 100 people who are looking at you like, what are we doing today? I had to be more strategic because there's 100 plus people who are depending on you to get paid, And so it's important for you to recognize that you're not doing the practice or your team any favor if you are using that same leadership skill set from the beginning days, and now you have a completely different living, breathing practice that now has multiple team members, multiple levels of revenue that's coming in. For some folks who are listening, I know you have different types of disciplinaries and modalities that are happening inside your practice. Like your leadership skill set has to change. And if you don't, then what will happen, this is where burnout occurs because you're not being strategic with your decisions. You're not giving yourself time away so that way you actually have the thinking time to make actual decisions. You're not thinking about the future state of your practice. So everything becomes more or less like, what's on the to-do list now? Let me answer this phone call today. And that's not how it works. That is not how it works. And so a lot of times when clients start to realize, oh, the team needs a different type of conversation, or the team isn't hitting the goals, or I'm losing money inside of my bank account, it is because your leadership skill set didn't switch. Your mindset didn't switch. You are staying stuck in the past when you need to move forward in the future. So how can you recognize that you've hit like a leadership ceiling, or where you're like, oh, I need to work on my leadership development and maybe not focus on growing the practice, or maybe not put so much emphasis on like the revenue. I do believe that if you want to make more money inside of your practice, then become a better leader. Like learn how to lead yourself, learn how to lead your team. So what does that look like when you get to a ceiling and there's a shift that needs to make? Oftentimes you see it in your team. Like your team is a reflection of you and who you are as a leader. So if you are chaotic as a leader, your team is going to be chaotic. That's how they're going to come. If you are not clear, the communication doesn't happen, they're going to come to you with so many questions, like repeat questions. So what I always say is that if you feel like you're in the twilight zone, where it's like, didn't I just answer that question yesterday? Or didn't I just say that? Didn't we just talk about this? Or if you delegated something, well, they didn't do it right. All of those are signs that your leadership needs to change. If you're looking at your KPIs or your key performance indicators and you are saying a certain metric, you need to be X amount of visits or appointments or encounters or sessions, or, you need to have this amount of productivity, and that's not happening, probably something needs to change with your leadership. If you have folks who aren't taking the job seriously and you need certain things from them, like the schedule that they need to work, or the documentation that needs to be done, or the patient follow-up that needs to be completed timely, certain customer service things, billing needs to be closed out, denials need to be worked, and you are sitting there in the mess of things, then that's a very clear indication that you've hit a leadership ceiling. If from a personal standpoint, and when I knew something had to change with my leadership, is I was working way too many hours. Why was I working way too many hours? Because I had a team that didn't have the skill sets that I needed them to have, didn't have the strengths that was appropriate for their positions, and sometimes weren't a really great culture fit for what we had going on. So I was trying to make up for that work. Because if I didn't do it, then it wasn't going to get done compared to me holding my team accountable. So you have to recognize, like, is it a people problem or is it a leadership problem? More times than not, if you have a team member who is causing you pain, or if you think like you're the problem, before you even fire that person, you have to check within yourself. Like, are you the problem? Like, are you not leading them appropriately? Did you not give them the tools that they need to be successful? Did you not onboard them correctly? Did you not hire them correctly from the jump? Did you make a bad hire? So looking at yourself as a leader first is important. And then if you recognize, I don't know how to have a difficult conversation, or I'm communicating, but they don't seem to get it. And all of those are red flags that something has to change with your leadership. If you're sitting here like, man, you're talking to me, or that sounds like my team, where I feel like they could do better or have a great team, but there's some tweaks that need to happen, or there's a bigger practice that I have on my heart, then the next steps that you need to take is really addressing like what skills. So I hosted, at the time of this recording, I hosted a Q&A. So I do a 5-day Own Your CEO Status challenge. And so we had a special bonus Q&A. And so one of the 2 easiest questions that you can ask at any point in time is what is working and what is not working. It's very evident for what is working. You can feel what is working. And that's always easier to answer. So you can ask yourself, what is working about your leadership? When you think about your team collectively, rate your team. So on a scale from 1 to 10, rate your team. Where do they fall? So if they're a 5, what needs to happen for them to get from a 5 to a 10? That's the leadership that you need to exhibit. Or they might need you different. It might be where you have somebody and they need more direction. It might be where you're talking in circles or being more passive about your communication instead of saying, this is what we need. So in that challenge Q&A, one of the topics that came up was talking around the productivity requirement, and that the productivity was based on your higher performers, your middle performers, and your lower performers. Your lower performers will always opt in for the least amount of work. Instead of your higher performer will do exactly what is required. And so when you're communicating, then you have to be very direct with what is needed. So this is the KPI. We need 27 visits a day, or we need 27 visits a week, or we need 150 claims filed on a daily basis. Like, what is that? And once you rate your team from 1 to 10, and let's say that they're a 5, then what is the gap between 5 and 10? And what does it take for you to get them from a 5 to 10? It should be clear for how do you need to lead that person. So if they're not hitting their KPIs, or if they are giving things back to you, or if there's certain tasks that they're supposed to work on that is not going well, or if things are falling through the cracks, then that's going to tell you how do you need to have those conversations? What do you need to bring into the conversations? Hopefully, if you're talking to your team, you should be meeting with your team. You should know the strengths and weaknesses of your team. And so when we think about the leadership skill set and the evolution of it, you also have to look at how are you treating yourself? So how are you really looking at yourself as a leader? And are you giving yourself the time that you need to make the decisions that are required as part of the practice? Are you leading yourself appropriately? Are you maybe leading from a place of accountability, or are you leading from a place of avoidance? So all those things fall into the self-reflection that you need to focus on as a leader. The other piece of this is that if you need some additional help, then I do have the 5-day Own Your CEO Status challenge. That is amazing. So for 5 days, we're working on the exact areas within your practice when it comes to operations, when it comes to making financial decisions, when it comes to the high performance team, how to communicate with your team, making sure that you understand the CEO identity and the mindset that you need to have for where you're at now inside of your practice. And so it's a beautiful week of transformational work. You get challenges or homework every single day, and then you report out on it the following day. So there's a lot of momentum that happens in that. So imagine if you're with me for 5 days, and if you are sitting in the CEO seat knowing I need to become a stronger leader, a more empowered leader, my team needs a different type of leader, my vision needs for me to show up to it differently as a CEO, and I really need to own my CEO status, come hang out with me for 5 days During those 5 days, we're going to dive into every area of your practice, including the important team conversations that you need to have, the operational systems that you need to implement so you can scale sustainably. We're going to make sure that you understand like the bigger financial decisions that you need to make within your practice and the CEO identity and mindset that your practice needs today. Not the old mindset, but the mindset reset. So it's an amazing week of homework that you'll have. You'll get a challenge each day and you'll report back to me on the next day. So it's really fun just to watch the transformation for people who enter into the challenge and who they become during those 5 days and when they leave the challenge. So if this sounds like something that you need, then go ahead and see the show notes and register today. All right, that's all I got for today. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and it empowers you as the CEO of your practice. If you enjoyed the podcast, please make sure you subscribe, share the message, and leave a review. If you want more information and support in growing and scaling your practice, click the link in the show notes to take advantage of our free resources or apply to work with me directly. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.